Hello everybody, I am James, I'm here with Book, I'm also here with Callum.
I'm Book, this is Callum. I'm Callum, this is
There we
Book.
go, yeah. This is going to be a flip through of this new book from Ammo by Mig. You've never done a flip through
I'm really looking forward to this as a painter and a first time flip througher.
So let's get into it. Alright, so getting into the book, it's a nice chunky size, good weight to it, nice glossy printing, as you can see from the cover, presented by Ammo by Mig Jimenez, which means that it is tied to their products. Lots of hobby products there, but it's not just a shill for what they do, there's some really great techniques within.
Absolutely. So here at the start we've got the introduction by the editor Ruben Torregrossa. It basically outlines what the book aims to achieve, the levels it's looking to develop, and who it's for, essentially. It says here that it's got beginner and veteran painters. They can both find something of use in here.
Yeah, which is not an easy thing to do, so we'll see if they manage that. Ruben, as well, is no slouch when it comes to painting.
We'll see that later.
Got pictures of his stuff in here. So then the guide quickly transitions to the advice, and it begins with the toolbox, which definitely aimed more at the beginner side of painting, showing the different tools that you're going to need to put on your hobby bench. There's QR codes which will link you to the products that MIG produce, so that's kind of useful if you need stuff. And it's a good overview. It's got all the things you might need when you begin in your painting journey, and a few advanced things as well.
It's nice to see actually talk about brushes and brush quality as well, because this is one of the questions I see a lot online, is what should I be using? So it's quite clear in outlining the different benefits of synthetic, sable, you know, the quality of brushes. That was nice to see.
For sure. So section 3 goes through the really boring but essential part of prepping your figure. It's got the cleanup, gap filling, and then some priming. Mm-hmm. And then we move to section 4, painting techniques. You can see really great layout, really nice illustration of well-painted figures.
Beautiful stuff.
Suddenly we're on to colour theory, which quite an advanced technique.
Quite jarring.
Yeah, so going from the basics to something that, whilst I think we both would say it's really important, things like colour relativity and looking at triadic.
It might be a bit intimidating for your beginner painter.
A little bit, although I do think it's important, and maybe this is good stuff for someone to learn before they're taught how to edge highlight or something. But yeah, interesting that they take this approach with it.
Now here, we've got the basic concepts after colour theory. But this is essentially how to handle your brush, how to load the brush, how to thin your paint, which again is probably one of the most common questions online.
And they actually do that quite nicely, just showing the different amount of fluidity and how that affects things both on a wet palette and paper. So we really like that. And I also really like that they show different volumes and shapes and the way that you'd shade those and shadow them.
Yep.
These are all really good things, even things like different painting methods.
So here now we're starting to look into putting paint on the model, some paint applications. There's some really nice illustrations to go with it as well. Got some different scales here to show you what it'll look like at different sizes of miniature. And then we're into some actual painting techniques.
So it starts with colour blocking, which really is just putting paint on a figure, the most basic. Then dry brushing, which can be a very useful technique, not just for beginners. And then onto base coat, wash and highlight, which starts to add a bit more detail. You'll notice that different figures from different ranges are shown throughout this, which is something that we really like about the guide.
Yep. So now we're on to my favourite blue marines.
Boo.
But it's interesting to see actually a Games Workshop model, but using enamel washers, something not promoted by Games Workshop.
Yeah, true.
It's also covering airbrush application of matte varnishes and how to apply decals as well.
Yeah, so it's got a lot of stuff going on here. From there we go to the triad system, so that's kind of the foundry system or Kev Dallenmore's system if you want to name it to a person, and it goes through how to apply that to a figure.
So now we're moving on to wet blending, a traditional proper wet blending covering the steps of how you keep the paint moist, just basically showing you the colours involved and the process. Moving on to layering. Yeah,
layering, which weirdly is kind of the last technique they show, and if you progress, I would say wet blending is probably more difficult than layering.
I'd have probably put layering straight after base coats.
Yeah, but layering requires brush control, and there isn't really anything in the guide about how to firm up your grip of a model and keep it steady.
And how you hold yourself while you're doing it, it's not really covered, bracing yourself.
Yeah, so that's cool. Would have been a nice little extra, but still a lot of detail here about layering, showing these different shapes and where the light falls on them.
The volume of light as well, which is nice. So we're now on to one of my favourite parts of miniature painting. We've got chipping and weathering, and we've actually got a progression of a model that began in the it was the enamel washers section, wasn't it? But now it's showing that you can progress that model even further with some chipping and weathering on here, which is really nice to see.
Yeah, and it actually does end up, once they've applied pigments, which is something MIG ammo by Meg Produce, and some of those extra things, you end up with a really good looking marine at the end of these stages. So if you are starting out and gradually progressing your painting journey, you can go through those stages and get a great result.
So we're now on to section 5, which is basing. I'm not sure I would have put basing here. I probably would have put this before weathering.
Yeah, maybe. I guess that's somewhat personal, but yeah, probably the same for me. I think weathering is a progression from that because we've already covered using pigments.
On the base. Yeah. But it is nice to see it covered in basic. I see what I did there.
Yeah, that was very good. And once we're past that, it's on to the masterclasses, page 68. And this is where you get specific artists showing you how to paint specific figures with specific techniques.
So this is taking it from the beginner to the advanced, the veteran hobbyist, as they call it.
So we've got a couple of historical offerings. First of all, Ruben hits in with some 15mm figures and some effective painting here. At the same time, though, 15mm figures painted in this way, whilst they look really good, maybe could be done a little faster with some other approaches. There's not so much airbrush. There's not some of the shortcuts that possibly you or I would take on this. But they do look great.
They do. So for the next masterclass, we've got David Imrie, who is painting some American Civil War models using a fast painting approach, doing in blocks of 8, I believe it said. So we've got basically washing them all, blocking them all in at the same time to speed him up. And in the finished pictures, we do have a really nice finished product.
Yeah, and that's something that's worth mentioning. The photographs throughout the book are great. The step-by-step photos are really good.
Very clear.
Yeah, really clear. So if you are new to painting, this is definitely going to be helpful.
Absolutely. I think even these masterclasses would be helpful for a beginner painter.
All right, so from historical now to some sci-fi stuff, and Omar Alabi is painting droids in different ways. There's some flatter stuff, and then there's some metallics. Using the airbrush, but as someone who's used the airbrush a lot, yes, this is fast, but I think it could be done maybe a bit more nuanced, a bit more tonality through the airbrush. So maybe this is more to the beginner side, and I'm just hungry for a bit more advancement.
Maybe.
But the results, again, really effective, really good, and quick.
Yep. Next up, we've got Ivan San de Castro, who is painting some Riders of Rohan. So this one is elaborate and fast painting combined. So it looks like we're going a bit more higher level with each of these masterclasses. It really covers a lot on this. There's some nice texture applied. Having looked at this, I don't know whether we've painted with the airbrush. I've done a lot of horses. Whether there might be some quicker ways of getting these results. It might be leaning into more the beginner side of it, perhaps.
Yeah, I think if you're new to painting figures or you're just getting there, painting Riders of Rohan, following this guide, you will get really good results, like these final pictures here.
They are beautiful. There's some lovely volumes of light on the cloaks and the horses. I don't want to appear like we're...
Oh, no, not at all. It's well done. There is slight cutout issues on some of the pictures, and you can actually see that on one of these, but that's just a tiny, tiny thing. Another nice thing is you get to see galleries of the other work the artists have done, and if you're a beginner, this is going to be really inspirational, aspirational, something to work towards using the techniques that you're shown here and what you can actually achieve.
And someone to follow as well if you want to on social media.
There you go.
So Ruben's up again, and he's got some 15mm Spanish models. These are elaborate, and the article really shows this, I think. We've got some beautiful progression here of the shadow, intermediate shadow, base colour, the highlight and the final highlight, really showing you what you can achieve. He's actually got two different levels here, I believe. He's got the base one, and then on the brown he's really gone to town. And so it's nice to see the difference in what you can apply. These look great for 15mm.
Yeah, and I find it good that the guide kind of shows you don't need to do the same number of steps for every material or
You can
colour.
skip some, yeah.
That's really useful stuff. And
that will speed you up.
Exactly. This is the speedier things that we've been thirsting for,
yep.
Callum. And going more to that expert finish, there's a bit on flags here as well. Lots of different approaches as well. You've got the copper sheets to do more rigid flags. You've got painting them yourself. And then you've also got how to use flags of war flags and apply those to the figure. So really like that, and nice little bits about how to fill in the edges once you've stuck it together, that finishing touch. And then the final look, 15mm figures looking this good, that is how to paint Wargames figures in my mind. What a great result. Curious how long it took, but what a worthwhile way to spend your time.
It would be nice actually if that was perhaps put on there.
True. All right, so getting to the end of these masterclasses now, we've got George Hatsopoulos and some 100 Years War in 28mm, and I'm guessing these didn't get done too speedily. These are definitely elaborate.
We're firmly in elaborate painting now.
Yeah, and we've got some really in-depth guides here for some of the freehand aspects on the figures. The fleur-de-lis look really great on these.
They do.
For me, maybe overworking some areas of the figures perhaps though. The face guide, whilst really in depth, the techniques used could be quicker.
Could have been shortened down a few steps, do you think?
Yeah, perhaps. But again, like, I can't critique the way the guide's presented. Everything looks really neat, really easy to follow.
It is immaculate.
Yeah, so great job there.
We've got a gallery of George's work here, and just look at that from Perry Miniatures there. That is beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, clearly a very talented painter and footsore as well. The freehand,
is excellent.
Great.
So it's really great to see their insights. To close up the book, we've got Giuseppe Schaffal, who is a former Games Workshop painter who is painting a Plague Marine here. And it's in more of the traditional Games Workshop style, that heavy metal. But as we move towards the end of the book, we're seeing a divergence from that kind of pattern and their own personal touch as an artist, which is really nice to see. My particular favourite is the work on the axe, making it rusted. We've taken true metallic, through a bunch of glazes, made it almost non-metallic in nature, and then applied a bunch of rust and grime. So that was really nice to see.
Yeah, and the book finishes with a gallery of his work. Clearly no slouch with the brush.
Absolutely.
Some really nice looking stuff here. And it just all looks really good.
Well, there you go, folks. I really quite enjoyed looking through that. I think there's a lot for every different level of painter in the book there.
Yeah, for sure. And it looks really good. There's a lot of effort has gone into it. It's presented really well, nice layout. Lots to recommend it, lots of techniques that'll be useful, as you say, for different levels of painters. And it's available in English, but it's also available in Spanish as well, so that's good.
No, I blow inglés.
This video has been brought to you by WiPrime, Wargames Illustrated magazine's online members club. View more videos or find out more about WiPrime by following these links.